Hello, I'm Anthony. Welcome back to the Arturia SEM-V tutorial series. Preset deep dive number 2 for you today. I'm going to have a listen to this evolving synth sound. It's an arpeggio sound. I'll just play a few notes on the keyboard. Lots to go at on this preset today. Hope you're enjoying the series so far. If you are, please check out the Patreon and YouTube channel member links below. Awesome way to help support me. Right, the first thing that I've done is created a little 3-note arpeggio. It's just a simple C major arpeggio that's just essentially going to play forever. So I can get that going in the background and talk over the top of it. Let's do that. And the first thing that I'm going to do is turn all of the effects off. I'll bring them out one at a time where we can just hear they're having fairly minimal effect on the sound. There's the delay gone. A little bit of chorus, it's very subtle. And then a little bit of overdrive as well. Now at this point I would usually save this preset so that I can get back to this unaffected state easily. But I've got a problem with my system. I don't know whether or not it's my particular instance, but the presets in this plugin aren't saving. If I save it and recall it, it's basically not doing the job. Don't know whether or not that's a problem for everyone or just me. So I'm basically going to have to do all of these changes manually. Let's have a look in the advanced page and you can see that all of the advanced pages are turned on. I'm going to leave modulation till last because there's a lot to go at in that page. So I'm just going to disable that one for now. Keyboard follow is an interesting one. I've got 2 different parameters being used, VCF, frequency and mode. VCF frequency is relatively straightforward. The notes that I'm playing on my arpeggio are over this very small range, so you're going to hear very little impact from this sound. But obviously, as we travel up the keyboard, we're going to get brighter and brighter because of this VCF change that's happening, the frequency change. But VCF mode is a really interesting one to plug in. Depending on which notes on the keyboard you press, it's essentially going to move this toggle switch between envelope 1, LFO 1 and LFO 2. So what I'm going to do is get the sequence going and then manually, I'm going to turn this off and manually flick between these 3 switches to hear what those different effects sound like. This is the standard LFO 2. LFO 1 is obviously operating at a different rate. And here's envelope 2, really interesting. So we're basically just getting this envelope impact on every one of those key presses and it's no longer doing the undulating LFO thing. Or the sawtooth in the case of LFO 2. So if I turn the keyboard follow back on, and there's us toggling between the various modes. I think that's a pretty unusual effect to tie into keyboard follow. So we'll turn it off and then we can concentrate on the other settings. 8-voice programmer is a good one. We've got the VCF frequency and resonance mapped. The rest of them are empty. And this basically means that because we're in forward-backward mode here, switch back to regular mode, get the sequence running. See those different modulation effects basically virtually moving the VCF frequency and resonance knobs, just imposing some kind of randomness as the arpeggio plays. And now that we know that it's there, we can turn it off. So now we've got a basic synth sound. I've turned all of the advanced features off, come back to modulation at the end. Let's get that going again. So now we want to try to concentrate on where those pulse width modulation effects are coming from, and it's a little bit difficult to do it on all 3 oscillators simultaneously. You can see VCOs 1, 2 and the sub are all in use, so I'm just going to turn 2 of them off, and because I've got the problem with my presets, I'm just making a mental note that VCO 2 is at about 2 o'clock. The sub is fully on. Let's hear VCO 1 on its own. its pulse width modulation is being controlled by LFO1. So if I slow this down, you're going to hear that pinching and relaxing slow down. You see it in the oscilloscope, getting thinner and thinner, basically disappearing to nothing, coming back in and getting wider. Other than that relatively straightforward sound, throw that one away. Now let's have a listen to VCO2. Basically just getting a pulse click, and the reason for that is because the frequency knob is turned all the way down, minus 24 semitones, so this oscillator is being detuned to full octaves. If I bring it back up to 0, it's the basic sound of the oscillator. Take it right away. And once again, LFO, there's an LFO applying modulation to the pulse width, but this time it's coming from LFO2. So we've got this sawtooth. A little bit difficult to actually identify what this is doing because there's so little tone. But I think, to be absolutely honest with you, VCO2 is more of a sound effect in this preset. If I just quickly throw everything away, get back, turn all of the effects off again. And the basic tone of the oscillator is really just giving us those little clicks. The sub is very straightforward, just a simple pulse wave, providing a lot of the stability and weight behind the sound. Because both VCOs 1 and 2 are having their pulse width modulated pretty violently, it's the sub that's providing you with the kind of the stable anchor for the sound. Now bring the oscillator back in and you start to get that kind of dynamic movement again. Now let's have a look at these modulation settings. I'll get the preset going. The modulation wheel's turned all the way down at the moment, and I'll bring it in. I think that was just the chord restarting. Here we go. And that was me moving from minimum to maximum. What we've basically got there is the two VCOs, CVCO 1 and 2 mix. That's basically these knobs, the saw or pulse knob. And it's a little bit confusing as to what mix means in this context, because when the knobs are at 12 o'clock, you're not getting any sound. And then obviously, if you turn it either clockwise or anti-clockwise, you're going to get some oscillator effect. So what's happening when you increase the modulation wheel? Well, it's kind of virtually turning these knobs. It's not controlling the overall volume. If I simplify things a little bit to just concentrate on VCO1, and I set VCO1 to 12 o'clock and turn the modulation wheel all the way down, I'll get the sequence running. Total silence, because VCO1 is turned off. Now as I increase the modulation wheel, VCO1 mix is going to be modulated from whatever its default value is up to 50%. Which is basically going to fully introduce the pulse width, the pulse wave. And there it is. Turn that off again. Of course, we got both VCOs then because VCO2 is also being mixed in, but that's basically got nothing to do. There's no real sound there. You just get that little pulsing click. So bear in mind that VCO1 mix is a little bit confusing in the context of this synth because it's not just a simple volume control. It's only actually a 0 at one point on the knob, which is 12 o'clock. Just turn my modulation wheel all the way back down again, and you can see that the other things that it's doing, it's controlling the pulse width modulation, so yet another modulation to both oscillators and also the VCF frequency. Now, when I was preparing for this video, I realised that if you turn the frequency down a little bit and let the modulation wheel really loose on this, you get a really very nice effect. So let's get it going again. So that's the modulation wheel all the way down. And now I'll start introducing it. So what's happening there is that because I've given the VCF frequency more scope to play, it's now got a very low bass frequency, but as I increase the modulation wheel, this knob is having much more of an effect. We get a more dramatic modulation between minimum and maximum. And I think this is a huge takeaway from these preset deep dives that I do. It's not just about learning the preset itself, we're trying to figure out how the synth works. And if by moving one of these knobs I find a really cool sound, then I can say, try this, you know, these are the interesting kind of jump points in my opinion. That stuff with the VCO type, pulling in the envelope too, just dramatically change the sound, and those are the interesting things that you're trying to take away from the from learning what a preset does. And I've made so many changes to that preset, I'll throw it away again, get rid of all the effects. I'm going to leave everything else in now so that we're hearing the full rich sound, and I'm going to plug some Aftertouch changes in. The easiest way to check out Aftertouch is to actually draw some in. So I've just opened myself an Aftertouch lane on the sequence and just draw some in. Now you can hear the various effects as we go through the tonal range. And so at the top of the mountain here is where I'm finding the most interest. So from about this point onwards, those were the Aftertouch zones that I would be wanting to concentrate on, to find those sweet spots. A few quick undos and all of that's gone. Finally, we've got these seemingly unassuming controls. These two LFO controls are actually having yet another dramatic effect on the sound. Got one controlling the VCF mode. LFO2 is a sawtooth, a pretty slow moving sawtooth, and that's cycling between the VCF modes, which as you saw earlier was this switch. LFO1, which is also operating pretty slowly, is having a negative effect. It's not off. 0% is off. This is minus 100%. So the LFO is pulling the frequency knob back. If I turn everything else off, and we just listen to the two LFOs, hopefully we can narrow it down a little bit. And that's why it's important to really, look deep into these presets, because this LFO1 operating on VCF frequency, it looks like it's off, but it isn't. It's minus 100%, and it's pulling this frequency knob back every time LFO1 cycles, having a dramatic effect on the sound. And that'll do us for this one. Hope you enjoyed the episode and the series. If you did, please hit the like button. I'll see you for the next one. Thanks a lot.